Hey everyone! This video is part of a series where we explore Auxl's capabilities. In this video, we'll set up an OAuth authentication flow step by step. Since I last worked on my recipe API, it was decided to secure its services from unauthorized use. I no longer have access without a valid token. Our services now use the OAuth authorization code flow. To get a token, we will need to perform two requests. One to the authorization endpoint, which allows us to log in and returns an authorization code if successful, and one to the token endpoint, where we can exchange our authorization code for a valid token. We'll start by constructing the part that does the authorization. I've added a request node for the authorization endpoint, and I've connected a collection with the required parameters to its designated input. We'll use the client ID and callback URL we have set up in our environment variables. The authorization endpoint requires us to enter a username and password. Browser nodes are great for requests that need interactive user input. I'll connect it to the request and hook up its status and parameter outlets to the output. Let's give it a try. On login success, we'll be redirected to our callback URL with the authorization code in its location. The browser node outputs its current values, including the parameters of its current location, when it exits. You can exit manually by pressing the button or automatically by triggering a predefined exit condition. We'll set up an exit condition later. Let's continue setting up the token endpoint so we can exchange our code for a valid token. The token endpoint expects a URL encoded form payload with the following parameters. We'll once again use the client ID and callback URL from our environment variables and enter the code from our previous response. We'll connect this request to a regular client and connect its status and payload ports to the output. Looks like we received a valid token. Let's use this token with the call that retrieves all recipes. I'll use a convenience node called auth that returns a collection with a properly formatted authentication header. We've copied and pasted our token from our previous result. Alternatively, cache the token in a separate document and use it as an auxiliary value wherever you need it. Check out our primer video to learn how this works. Our recipes are once again accessible. We now have a multi-step way to get an authentication token. But we can do better than that. We know that when the login succeeds, we get redirected to our callback URL with, in its route, the authorization code. When this happens, I want my browser to automatically exit and pass our code to our token endpoint. I'll write some JavaScript that checks for the existence of our callback URL and code in the browser's current location. I'll let the exit condition return true if that's the case. We'll capture the code in a collection node and connect it to the post data for our token request. I'll execute just the authorization part to fill up our collection with a code. Autocomplete now allows me to template the code value in our token post data. That should complete the chain. Let's test it out. Now, whenever I need a new token, I'll run this selection. I can also cache the token in a document or save it in my environment variables for easy access wherever I may need it. I'll create a snippet from this selection, so I can reuse it in other projects. Auxl's flexibility supports authentication flows of any complexity. Its modularity gives you visibility every step of the way and allows you to more effectively design and troubleshoot your services. Thanks for watching. Enjoy using Auxl and stay tuned for our next tutorial.